he had become splintered into 7 chips, all of which had become banded together. Compared to the devotions his fragments enjoyed, the pieces are rather small. Combined, they are only 11 by 15 inches. Today the chips are embedded in the southeastern corner of the Kaaba, 4 feet above the ground. But Allah is no ordinary assemblage of minerals. He, like his fellow Islamic god, our Rahman, had a pre-Islamic past. And as we have seen, Muslims have a variety of entertaining accounts of how they were graced with such an auspicious token of the universe's creator. But before we entertain the justifications for promoting a pair of pagan stones, let's look at Allah and our Rahman through the eyes of a historian. Stone cults were neither uncommon nor uncivilized. Even the Greeks were wont to worship stones. Apollo was once believed to be a meteorite in Delphi. His sanctuary was thought to be the center of the earth. Robert Charroux, in Masters of the World, explained, Hellenius, the son of Priam, and a famous Greek soothsayer, would foretell the future by means of a stone that had been given to him by Apollo. To obtain the oracle of the gods, he shook the stone above his head and recited the incantations. The stone then spoke in a strange, faint voice and announced the future. And so it would be. A millennia later, Mohammed would heed the summons of another talking stone. But the black stone in its house were hardly unique. There were many such temples, called tawahits, scattered across Arabia. Patrons made sacrifices and left gifts to their stone of choice, prostrated themselves in prayer, and circumambulated the shrines. Most commanded a Hajj and Umrah pilgrimages during the holy months. Those seeking the rock's blessing would commonly rub themselves against the stone and kiss it reverently. The Islamic scripture agrees.
Ishaq, every house had an idol which they worshipped. They would rub the stone for good luck. When Allah sent Muhammad with the message of monotheism, the Quraysh said, would he make many gods into one god? This is a strange thing.
Unfortunately for Islam, many gods do not one true God make.
Ishaq, now along with the Kaaba, the Arabs had adopted tawaghits, temples they venerated like the Kaaba. They too had their custodians. They used to circumambulate them.
According to the Islamic scriptures, Allah was one of many rock idols. The Kaaba was one of many pagan rock shrines. Islamic circumambulation was one of many pagan rites.
Ishaq, Alat was in a Tawaghit temple in Faif, which was venerated like the Kaaba. When they had finished their Kaaba Hajj, they circumambulated Al-Uzza. The Quraysh worshipped her. Manat was worshipped by the Aus and Khazraj in Yathrib.
Those who prayed to Al-Uzza and Manat
shaved their heads and completed all of the rites associated with the Hajj.
These men were pagans. How did their rituals become part of Islam, and why? Muslims are compelled to observe the same rituals today. The black stone, its house, the prostration, kissing, circumambulation, shaving, the Hajj, Umrah, and holy months somehow migrated from a pagan past to Orthodox Islam by way of corrupted Jewish scriptures. The most telling of these tales is the one in which Muhammad and Allah claim that Abraham smashed the lesser idols so that his people might turn to the largest one. A quartz god was worshipped in Tabhala, an oasis town 7 days' journey from Mecca. Sad was the rock deity in the region of Judah, along the Red Sea, west of Mecca.
Ishaq, many Arabs served an idol named Dul Khalasa. Himyar had a temple called Riyam. Ruda was the temple of the Banu Rabi'i. Dul Kabat belonged to the Banu Bakr. Bahira was the filly of the Sa'iba. Hami was their stallion. Wasila was a ewe. Muhammad said, Allah has not made Bahira, Wasila, or Hami, and those who do not agree invent lies.
We are told that the Ads and the Nabateans bowed to
Dul al-Shara and his shrine in Petra.
He was a proud god with a large rectangular stone and an elegant temple to match. Like Allah, Dru al-Shara was a reddish-brown rock, Fellow moon gods could be found in Merib, Herida, and Tamah. Elumka was the Sabian moon god in Marib. In Herida, the god was Sin, named after the famous moon god of the Chaldeans in Ur. The last Babylonian king, Nabonidus, built an elaborate ta'agat in Timah to his god while in exile. The moon god of Mecca, Allah, lived, if we may be so bold, in the heart of moon god country.
Bukhari. We were in the prophet's company in the middle of the lunar month. He looked at the moon and said, "You will see your Lord as you see this moon."
The reverence to the moon god was hardly a flight of fancy. In the 8th chapter of Judges, there's a 3,000-year-old biblical reference. The Ishmaelites hung crescent moon ornaments from their camels' necks, is what it says. So today, when you look up and see crescent moons decorating Muslim mosques and flags, you'll know that the Arabian love affair with the moon has survived 30 centuries. Yet this affair was no more monogamous than Islam. Even in his neighborhood, Allah had competition. The sun god Manaf was worshipped by the Quraysh, as was Habal, a handsome idol carved into the shape of a man. Allah's daughters, Aluza, Alat, and Manat, being chips off the old block, were stones. Manat was symbolized by a darkened moon, eerily reminiscent of Islam today. She was the goddess of fate, and commanded her subjects to shave their heads when approaching her. Being a good pagan, when Muhammad fulfilled his Umrah pilgrimage in Mecca, he shaved his head in Manat's presence. This pagan practice was invested with godly overtones when Muhammad insisted that Abraham had done likewise. Later, Muhammad honored the pagan goddess Manat by incorporating predestination into Islam and by using her insignia as the logo of his new religion. Not to be outdone, Alat had her own shrine in Talaf near Mecca. A cubic rock, she lived on barley porridge. While her diet was humble, her veneration was not. Her temple lies under the left minaret of the early Islamic mosque at Taif. Alat's sister, the goddess Aluza, was considerably younger and lived in the Hurid valley. A Quraysh favorite, she received the most lavish gifts and sacrifices. Muhammad saw her as a nude black woman. Interestingly enough, Islam was nearly sacrificed at the altar of Allah's 3 little girls. In a weaker moment, the Prophet said that the goddesses Alat, Aluza, and Manat were conduits to Allah, intermediaries. But then, when the monotheistic wing of his religion objected to 4 pagan gods, being 3 too many, the Prophet confessed that he had been inspired by Satan. Islam as a religion died that day in Mecca, only to be reborn as a political doctrine in Yathrib the following year. But we're getting ahead of our story. Although Muhammad is credited with bringing monotheism to Arabs, the Quran venerates 3 distinctively different gods. In the first Meccan period, the god was nameless. He was referenced solely by the title Lord. This deity was modeled after Zayd's god, which is not surprising, since the Meccan Hanif's poems formed the basis of Muhammad's early surahs. The Hanifs derived the title Lord and their faith from the Jews, a people who called their God Lord for fear of saying his name. If they used Yahweh's name incorrectly, they were accused of blasphemy and risked being stoned. While their scriptures contained 7,000 repetitions of his name, rabbis always read and said Adonai in its place. Being illiterate, the Meccans would not have known the difference. But a title was insufficient. The creator god of the universe needed a name. All gods had name, so in the second Meccan period, Muhammad called his Lord Ar-Rahman. Inscriptions from the 5th century reveal that Ar-Rahman was worshipped in Yemen by another group of Hanifs. We know about them because Dru Nuwas, the Jew Yemeni king, may have been one of them. His exploits were chronicled in Greek, Syriac, and Aramaic. When he attacked the Abyssinian Christians in southern Arabia in the early 6th century, he swore by Ar-Rahman, the merciful, and Ar-Rahim, the benevolent. An invocation including these gods' names now precedes all but the 9th surah. Muhammad transitioned from Lord to a Rahman in Surahs 56, 68, 78,